Welcome guys, since I made my last tutorial on Rainfall, I have been working to improve that Rainfall to make it look a lot more realistic and make it translucent and add these effects you see on the floor to it. So now we can get started straight away as to how I have done this, and I hope you guys will find this useful. So the first thing we will look at is the material of the rain. So now I won't show you guys how to make each of these things, but I will go through them so you guys can follow along and copy anything that you want. So first of all, I have a simple material. It's a translucent material, blend mode. The shading model is default lit and is two-sided. And then down in lighting mode, I'm using a volumetric directional. Now down here I'm using a vector for the base color. I just have a simple white color, close to white, not fully white, and then I'm using a radial gradient exponential, which I have connected to my opacity, and the density for my opacity is 0.5. So if I turn this up to 1, you can see that more of the particle or the radial gradient will be visible. So 0.5 I have noticed works pretty good for this. And then for my refraction I am using a lerp and a value of 1 in A and a value of 1.53 in B. And then I'm using a Fresnel, and the exponential for this is 5. So the value of 5 works pretty good. You guys can try different values. I have also tried 10, doesn't look too bad. But for this rainfall, I ended up choosing 5. Alright, so the next thing we will have a look at is the particle system itself. Now the particle system I'm using is actually very similar to my old video, if you guys have seen that. But I will go over anyway. So in the type data, I am using GPU sprites. So if you right click here, you can choose the type data. GPU sprites, of course, you can have a lot more of. So it's really useful for things like rain, snow. And then in the required, I'm using my material, this material. So just if you just search for the same material here, they should show up down here. In spawn, now this really varies. Now I'm using currently 35,000, but if you want slower rain, you can use less, or you can actually, if you want to have heavy rain, but if you make the rain follow your player character, or use level of details. Now I'm not going to go into level details here because it's a big topic as well, but you can set up level of details so the rain far away has not actually spawned, which will obviously save you a lot more resources and will save you time as well. So in this basically I'm using 35,000, but this value really depends on how you want your rain to look. And in the lifetime I'm using 5.5. Now this also depends on how high your rain is. So if your rain is, I don't know, quite close to the ground, you can maybe put this up to 2 or 3 and it should still work pretty good. Now the initial size is pretty standard. This works for me. 3 on the X max and 3 minimum, also the Y. And then these on the Z you can use 10, -10, or even 5 and -5 should work pretty good for you. And then the velocity, so I'm just having the rainfall downwards on the Z axis. So I'm using -500 in the Z. Then I have an initial location seed, which determines where the rain spawns. So X, Y and Z. So these are the 3 that I am using in the location seeds. So the rain spawns from these positions. And then I have a size by speed. Now in this I'm just using a standard speed, so on the y-axis I'm using 5 and the max as well, 5, and on the x-axis I'm using 0 and 0.4. Now this value works pretty good for me, but then again you guys can play around with it to see if you guys like it differently. Now in my acceleration I have put the y to -50. Now if you guys have ever seen like really heavy rain, it doesn't actually go straight down, it actually goes to the side. So you guys can play around with these settings to make the rain fall sideways, because not all rain is going to be straight, because there's going to be wind and many other factors affecting the rain. But for this I'm just using a standard -900 value to get the rain to fall straight down, and just a little variation on the y-axis. And then I'm using a collision. So when my rain collides with something, I'm having it killed. Now you can try bounce. If I show you guys, I am having a few issues with bounce. So if I select my rain particle, now inside here, there's obviously a lot less rain coming through. But as you guys can see, there's still a few particles that are coming through the surface. Now I haven't found a perfect solution to this, except that I can have my rain not spawn on top of something, but it does also collide. As you guys can see, these particles are bouncing off the top, so I'm not sure why they're getting through. Could be a problem with my collision on the mesh, but this is something you guys should know, since you guys will probably be using this Rainfall. Alright, so now if I go to the next one, in my older video I had an issue. So in my older Rainfall tutorial, I had an issue where the rainfall looked really nice when you looked straight at it, but when you looked up at it, it used to turn sideways. So someone commented saying it looked like falling rice, which was quite correct indeed. So for this I am using a lock axes, and I have locked them to X, so the rain, no matter where you look at the rain from, it comes straight down. So it just falls on the x-axis. So yeah, so this is the basic rainfall that I have. I'll just turn the collision back to kill. Yeah, this is pretty good. And then I have a few more particle effects. So as you guys can see, these things, these white things that actually spawn time to time, and these ripples, which would be, I guess, which would make a lot more sense on water, because to kind of give you the feel that the rain is actually colliding with the water. As you guys can see, they randomly appear. So I will show you how I made those as well. Alright, so for my water ripples, I basically used GIMP. Now GIMP is a really useful, it's a free software, kind of like Blender is. So GIMP is an alternative for Photoshop. It's really good, and there's a lot of things you can achieve with this. So I just made a new image, 200 by 200, that's okay. I went to filters, came to render, clouds, solid noise, the detail to 15, and the X and Y to 4. Once you've done that, I went to filters, distorts, and waves. Now as you guys can see, changing these values will give you different types of waves, or ripple effects. So whichever one you like, just make one, press OK, and then just export it to export it somewhere where you guys can later access it. Okay, and then once you have your ripple effects, you can just bring it inside Unreal Engine. Just import it. So this is mine, and what I did, I made a simple mesh inside Blender. So it's just a I just made a circle with about 16 vertices. I filled it and I unwrapped it to the texture of the water ripple. Now it took me quite a few goes, so I had to experiment a lot to get it to look a lot like slightly more nicer, because before it was too visible. So this looks more transparent here. So for this I right click on this, create material, and I made this material for the water ripple. So again, I'm just using I just connected this to the base color onto, and then in the opacity I turned this down to 0.3, so you can kind of see through it as well. And of course the material itself is translucent and two-sided, and in the lighting mode I'm using surface translucency volume. And then about the same options here. So in refraction I'm using 0.3, so 1 and 1.5 and 0.3, which is connected to a Fresnel and then a lerp. Now I'm just intrigued as to what it will do if I turn this up. So yeah, just a basic material here, nothing too complex again. So I'll just save this. And then the second thing I did is make a particle system. Now there are quite a few limitations to this type of a particle system, and I will show you guys what those are. Oh, this looks slightly better now since I've turned up the expo on the Fresnel. Okay, so and then I added this to my particle system. So if I take this particle system away and I turn this on, so you guys can instantly see all of those down here. So how I have done this is, first of all, I'm using a mesh data. So in the same place, just right click and choose in type data, just choose mesh, and in your mesh I have selected this this thing which only has about 15 vertices. So just a simple mesh that I made inside Blender, and from here I am spawning about 2500 of these. But now keep in mind that you can't actually have that many of these because these aren't GPU sprites. You are using live meshes inside here. So this is quite limited. I think it's up to 1000. It goes up to 1000, so I'm not having that many spawn. In the required, of course, I have the same material as I have on the mesh. In the lifetime, I get them to spawn for 2 seconds in the minimum and maximum. Initial size, I had to make this quite small, but that really depends on how large your mesh is. Now my mesh was huge when I imported it, so I had to make the size really small. But you guys can do it varying on your depending on how big your mesh is. And then I'm using a color over life, which is not really needed, to be honest. Don't know why I have it here. Anyways, and then I have an initial location. So I roughly have a spawn around the same as the rain. So my rain was 1000 by 1000 by 1000 in this case, because I want to spawn on the grounds. So the X and the Y are 1000 each, and the Z is 0, so it stays on the ground. And then next I also have lock axis on this, so I was also having, so if I turn this off, you guys can perhaps, I'm not sure if it will show up here very nicely, but what was happening is, if I didn't lock them to the Z-axis, they would turn sideways, so they would kind of go through the ground, and which would not look very nice at all. So to overcome that effect, I locked it to the Z-axis. And then another important thing I have a size by life. So this thing that you have, so this thing where it actually spawns, perhaps if I was to make the lifetime a lot longer. So now you can kind of see the effect. So the effect that you see that actually starts from the middle and then goes outwards is actually achieved by adding a size by life. So in the size by life, what I'm doing is, so at 0 seconds, I get it to start from 0.1 on each of the axes, so the actual scale of the object at 0.1, and at 2 seconds it goes up to 1. So it starts from the middle and then it grows bigger. So that's a really useful trick to, you know, I didn't have to animate anything. I just used the particle system, and I have gotten this to work. So this is basically how I have done these. And then another thing I have is, if you guys notice on the ground, you have these things spawning randomly at different places. So these things, which kind of also add to the rain itself. Now you guys can make splashes, so you guys can have a mesh and just have a spawn, just similar to the water ripples. But I haven't gone into that much detail because for me this looks quite alright. So for the last thing, which should be yep, so, and then for the last one where I have them so as I showed you these things that I have spawning around. So for these things, what I have done is I'm just using GPU sprites again. In the required, I'm using the same as my rain particle system. Now you guys can have these in the same place, so all of your emitters can be inside one particle system. But I made different ones because I'm experimenting with things. So in spawn again, I'm doing 2500. Sorry, not 2500. I'm doing 2500. In this case, I do have 2500 spawning because these are GPU sprites. Lifetime, simple, 0 to 1. I don't want them staying on the ground for too long. Initial size, 225, 225. Color over life, not really needed again because remember our material is inside the our color comes from the material itself. Initial location, the same as the rain, and log axis is that again, so it doesn't turn the side to side or anything. And size by life we don't need. So this is basically how I have made the full rain particle system. Now one issue with these things, now because these are only spawning along the X and the Y axes, if you were to have a ground, let's say you had a hill, these things won't appear on the hill. So currently these would only work on a plain surface. But you guys can add effects to your materials, animate a flip book, which personally I have no experience with, and I don't find it necessary for my purposes. But if you guys do want to look into it, please do. And then final thing I will show you guys is how I have set my scene to make it look wet and all these sparkles and everything. Alright, so scene setting obviously forms a major part of how your game looks, lighting and everything affects the scene. So as you guys can see down here, so if I go to this side and look here, you guys can see there's a fog that starts to come. So I am using, and if I go down here, if I type fog, you guys can really see I'm using both the atmospheric fog. So if I turn this off, you guys can see that the sky suddenly becomes very different. So I'm using an atmospheric fog first of all, and obviously I've changed the values. I'm having it start 100 meters away, or however this works. I'm not sure with the scale, with which value you use, this centimeters or meters, but I'm having my fog start pretty close up. And then I'm also using an exponential height fog. So if I turn this off, you guys can see that the sky becomes very clear all of a sudden. Because it's raining, I think it adds a nice effect to this. And then secondly, I have a post-process volume. So if I go outside this post-process volume, it's really big, so I don't think I'll be able to, but things will start to look very different. So inside the post-process volume, the few settings I'm using, first of all I'm using temperature. So if I turn this off, you guys can see that all of a sudden the scene looks very different. I'm not sure if it looks better or worse. Let me know in the comments if it's better or worse with the temperature. So one side goes completely blue and the other kind of tilts towards like an orangish yellowish color. But I think this color personally suits the rain a little more than having this off. But it's really up to your opinion, although this does look quite realistic as well. And then so if I turn this back on, then I have I am using a lens flare. So if I look at the ground, these effects you see down here, this is lens flare. So I think these add really nicely as well to how good the game looks. You guys can turn this up quite a bit, but at times it might get too much, so you also want to keep it around 1 perhaps or something, really up to your choice. Then I have an auto exposure. I'm using histogram because basic gets too bright all of a sudden, so I don't like basic. I only like using the first one. And I also have bloom on. Now bloom is a really interesting thing. So if I turn this off, you guys can see that all of a sudden the actual intensity goes really high. So this kind of controls how bright your sparkling effects or your lighting is. Now this is really bad, and this would be bad in a real game because that's just too bright. As you guys can see, turning this up makes it brighter, and turning this off kind of takes away the sparkliness completely. So it's good having a few sparkles here and there, because that kind of shows you the reflective rain itself as well. And then I am using an AA, so if I turn this off, you guys can see all of a sudden everything looks a little more dull. So there's no more of those sparkling effects as many, or the grass looks a bit more, kind of has like rough edges. So I prefer using FXAA. I don't like the other one as much. I like to have this enabled because now the grass looks a lot more, the edges look a lot more smoother and cleaner, and you can see all the sparkling effects. So this is basically all I'm using in my in my post process. And then the second thing I have is all my materials. So if I go into this ground material here, you guys can see I have turned off my, and I have a crash. So yeah, basically I have turned off my roughness completely, and I'll be back once my engine restarts. Right, so having recovered from the crash, let's continue. So all my ground textures, if I show you, all of them have no roughness on them, so which looks a lot more smoother. Actually, even with roughness, if I turn the roughness up to 1, you can still see this texture looks pretty muddy and pretty wet. Now I made this texture inside GIMP, and I will show you at the end of the video how you guys can make your own mud texture using GIMP, or quite a few different textures. So if you play around with the settings in GIMP, you guys can achieve some amazing results. So yeah, so this is the basic texture I'm using, and I have turned the roughness up, and similarly with my plants. So if I perhaps if I can find one of my plants and show you guys. So for this there's some banana plant, for example. Once again, if I open the material for this up, I have turned down the roughness quite a bit. I haven't made it completely zero roughness, and I have also added some wind to it. As you guys can see, they also move around. So I think it might be better if I show you the actual material itself. So I'm just using a simple grass wind, roughness to 0, metallic to 0. Obviously I've changed them inside the material instance, so it looks really shiny, and kind of seems like the water is actually interacting with this. Now you guys can have this thing where as soon as it starts raining, you can change the material dynamically over your plants, or just a sudden change to show that obviously the world has changed, and now it's raining, so everything looks a lot more wet. So same with the rocks. I turned the roughness to 0, so everything you see here, the roughness is not exactly 0, but it's quite low, so it looks a lot more, you know, shiny and reflective. So this is basically how I have done these, and then if I click simulate, I want you guys to keep your eyes around this area. So I have another effect down here, which I think could be useful. Now, I was working on a cloud system, but making a cloud system is too expensive, so I wanted to have a cloud right here, like a rainy cloud, really heavy storm, and I had these lightning effects. So if I show you this one, so this lightning effects, what I have here is I have this lightning effect hit this thing, so once it hits it, I'm spawning a fire particle system to kind of show that this has caused this to start. And what I have here is for the lightning effect, how I have done this, I'm using a blueprint class, so it starts from about here, and it's a simple texture. So it's a simple texture. Now I got this texture from the public domain. It was a full picture, and I cut out just the lighting. Just the lightning, and I think this is a really useful thing if you guys do want to add lightning effects to your game. Now if I stop this, inside the viewport, I just added the lightning here. I set the visibility to off, and I think this is also important to see. And then I have the original material on this, and then I have two material instances. In first one, I have turned the emissiveness up to 50, which is when the lightning actually strikes, and in the second material I have turned it back to -1, so it goes completely dark, which kinda is the middle period between the two lightning strikes that take place. So how I am doing this, it starts off, I'm spawning the sound with this particle system, so the rain and thunder sound here. So after a few seconds, the visibility for this lightning is set to visible, and the material is set to the bright material. After 0.1 second, it goes back to the dark material. Then after 0.1 more seconds, it goes back to the bright material. And then after a delay of 0.3 seconds, the visibility is set to not visible. So this is the quick effect that you guys see here, nothing too complex again. It's very simple. Now obviously I've pretty much completed the tutorial, but this is just bonus stuff that I wanted to show you guys. So yeah, you guys can set up lightning systems, dynamic lighting systems using emissive colors. Obviously inside here I just have my texture sample, so in the opacity mask it's the basic color, and the emissive value, I'm using the scalar in the emissive value. So this is the basics, and now I will show you guys how I made the texture for the ground. Alright, so for the texture, for the ground texture, what I did is I just made a new image. I'm using about 2K, so 2048, just a standard value. And then I went to filters, render, clouds, solid noise. Now I am using the X and the Y up to 16, so it gives me a larger texture. So I don't have to, use techniques to make it seamless inside the engine. So you guys can have large textures, there's a limit. Just click randomize so you get a random texture as well. And then in the foreground color I chose a brown. So just a normal brown. This is the code if you guys want it, but you guys can choose any normal brown. And for the second one I am using a kind of like a grayish color. So I just drag this to this side and I just go a gray color. Now these two, whatever colors you choose down here will kind of determine how your mud or whatever texture you're going to make looks. Then I went to colors, map, gradient map. So these two colors will take the place of the white and the black down here. And then just make a new layer with transparency selected. Now in this layer we'll add render, clouds, solid noise again. Just do this. And go to filters. Sorry, colors, brightness, contrast. Turn up the contrast to around 50 would do. And then we will select this. And we will go to filters, light and shadow, lighting effects, and bump map. Enable bump mapping. And all of a sudden you have a texture down here. Now all these values you guys see around here, no, this is fine. So all these values you guys see around here will determine how much of the height, the bump map is. Now obviously you don't want to go too overboard with this because that will look too unnatural. So about 0.10, sorry. Yes, something very simple would do. And this thing you see here is your light, so which side your light is coming in from. So it's a very dynamic process, so it's really useful. And then inside materials you guys can play on these settings: glowing, bright, shiny or polished, what type of material you want, type of look. The light you can play on the settings, you can turn the intensity down for the light. How would 0.5 look? So yeah, so you can play around with all these settings and options. You can just press OK. And once you press OK, it will make your texture for you. Just make sure you have this selected before you do go to bump map. Now this is a large texture, so it's taking some time, but it should be completed soon. Alright, so once it's done, you can click this, and as you can see, now naturally you guys have a nice looking mud texture, and on top you guys have these kind of like puddles, tiny puddles. So all of a sudden, just by doing that, you have a really nice looking mud texture. Now there are a few other options you guys can use inside GIMP. For example, if you go to filters, you guys can now you guys need to download a plugin for this, but you can also make a normal map down here. So a Server 3x3, you can do 3D preview and you can see that it looks really good. So yeah, so you can make a normal map which looks really good like this as well. Or what you can also do is you can go to map and make seamless. If you make a seamless, now your texture will not actually overlap too much. So now if you have this texture tiling, it should reduce the effect to some limits, but most of it will have to be done inside Unreal Engine. So this is it. Then you can just export this as a JPEG, not a PNG, because PNGs obviously take more space and are only useful if you have a transparent background. So I prefer JPEGs for my textures. And then inside Unreal Engine, I didn't save that because I already have it. If I show you guys the texture, so here I have my texture for the wet ground and also for the dry ground. So if you did want a dry ground, just don't do the lightning effects and you will have a dry ground texture. So this is basically it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and let me know in the comments what I could improve or what you guys liked about it, and thanks for watching.